Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today we have a very special guest. You will recognise him. It's Joe Miller. How are you doing, Joe?
Good, Paul. Thanks for having us.
It's good to see you. An absolute pleasure. It's Scottish Cup weekend, so who best to come on for a wee guest appearance than yourself, the man who smashed the treble back in 1989. How often are you reminded about that, Joe?
Oh, every time somebody bumps into me, they say always reminded of it.
Superb. Obviously, you've got the hoops behind you. You're still a regular at Celtic Park. You still go to the games. Big fan of the club since you were a boy. Let's have a wee chat about how things are going under Ange. You were aware of Ange Postecoglou. You yourself have coached over in Australia. How do you think things are going under Ange, particularly this season?
It's gone well, as everybody can see. He's done a fantastic job coming in. You know, there's a lot of doubters out there, but you've always got to give somebody a chance and see how it develops. But with a club like Celtic, you know, the infrastructure that's there and the budgets that they have and, you know, the quality of staff and the teams all right down to the youth level, you know, you'll do well. It's a dream job to have. So I'm not surprised Ange went in there and grasped it. And, you know, I think he got a lot of help with the people round about him. Mm-hmm. And he's settled in well. I think he's enjoying life.
Yeah, it looks like he is.
Sydney.
Do you miss it? Do you go back, Joe?
Do I miss it?
Yeah.
No. Well, the funny thing is, when I first went out there, it was great because I went out there, I was still playing, and I had I don't know how to say it, but I woke up with a feeling that I was rejuvenated a wee bit because the heat was starting to go through my bones, and I was enjoying playing in the heat. I think my first game, it was 34 degrees. It was. I mean, my face was purple, you know, trying to breathe, pouring water on myself during the game. It was interesting playing that sort of. We played on a Friday night where it was cooler, but the humidity was frightening. But I was out there for about 5 years and I enjoyed myself out there because I played for a couple of years, couple of seasons, and I coached for a couple of seasons before I came back and started getting into coaching and managing at Clyde.
Yeah, well, you know, Scottish Cups, Clyde, we've heard all the chat this season about big shocks in the Cup, Joe. There was a massive shock with Darvel obviously beating Aberdeen, but it did, you know, put my mind back to that game, and you were a massive part, but you were in the Clyde. I mean, you were the manager, co-manager of Clyde when you beat us 2-1.
Aye, and I came on as well the last quarter of an hour, I think it was. But it was a good group of boys to put together, and they would run through a brick wall for you. And that was the thing. Great side. If you could keep them together and just bottle them, they won the league. No bother. But I just don't think Clyde had the infrastructure to go up. We got to our first cup final in the Challenge Cup, which was disappointing because we went into that game and we were 3 players down because of injuries. But overall, for a club that never had one player at the start of the season and rebuilding their whole setup for the first team right down to pro youth, I had a huge task in my hands, you know. So, and then we came up against, put up friendlies against Man United and Premier League sides like Hearts, Aberdeen, Motherwell, Livingston, and we beat all of them, and then we beat Celtic in the Cup and we played Rangers at Ibrox and took them to extra time. We're actually winning the game, and they scored in the last minute to level it, and that took us to extra time. So overall, it was a great couple of years at Clyde, and it was a great learning curve for myself.
I was saying to you before we came on there, I've got a great picture of you with Roy Keane. You're in the Clyde colours and Keano's trying to keep up with you, I think. It's a great picture, though.
Aye. He was chasing me all over the place that day.
Superb. There's no doubt in your colours, though, Joe, and obviously this weekend we're up against Hearts. A tough tie, though, at Tynecastle. What was your memories of playing there as a Celtic player?
Hearts was always a hard ground to go to. Tynecastle, it used to be always hard. I mean, when I joined in the centenary year, you had Hibs, Hearts, it was Rangers, Aberdeen, Dundee United. They were all tough. It was a tough league, and you had to. It was all 2-point system, so you did really have to, work your backside off to get a result. But it was always hard going to Tynecastle, and I think at the time during the centenary year, I think Hearts was the team that stopped our run towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
They beat us, so we were full of confidence, and we got a shock with them beating us, because we didn't think nobody would stop us that year. But we went on to win it easily enough when we were comfortable winners. I think we won it by 8 points or something like that. And then we go to the Scottish Cup with Marker scoring 2. So that was a great season. But it's always difficult against any team. But I think just now, I was at the game during the week. Hearts set out their stall. They looked to just try and frustrate Celtic. They got an early goal, and then they just kind of, tried to frustrate, waste time, and it wasn't enjoyable to watch. And then you had the VAR. But all credit to Ange, he had made several changes, and I think he's had this weekend's game in his mind, that he made those 6 or 7 changes, that he could still go and get a result, and that which was pleasing, because the boys were excellent, I thought, the way they went about the game, and they got the result. So I think we might even see a changed team at the weekend's game. So it's difficult for any club to play against Celtic, because they move the ball that well. They move it so quickly. Teams can't even press as well as Celtic can. Celtic are pressing and they're in their face. But Celtic move the ball quickly, and there's interchanging, interpassing. There's nobody better than them.
That centenary season that you mentioned, Joe, that was the first season I started going to the games myself. Went to my first game in '87. So it's a team that's very special to myself and many others of my era. But the team and the morale that you guys have still got to this day. I remember you were celebrating the 30th anniversary of that incredible achievement. But they guys are still all your pals to this day. There's a special bond between you, isn't there?
Aye, there is. We're always on the phone, texting each other and in touch with each other all the time. I speak to Roy on a regular basis. I met Big Starkey yesterday. I speak to Rogie. I can't get him off the phone. Anton Rogan's a great laugh, great friend. Big Derek White, even though he's out in Dubai, always texting, maybe a phone call now and again. So we're all still in touch with each other. I see Granty. The only one we've no kind of Paul's kind of over in Australia, which I can understand that happens, that you're not in touch with a lot of people as you used to be. Paul's making a new life for himself out there, but it'd be good to get Paul back at some point as well, because he was missed at that 30th anniversary. It would be good to do something with him if he came back.
Oh, it definitely would. What a player as well. But yeah, you mentioned guys like Anton Rogan, Peter Grant. Again, I seen Peter Grant recently. Him and you haven't aged. I don't know what on the earth is in the water, Joe, but you guys haven't aged. It's incredible.
We just partied hard.
Brilliant, superb.
Every night of the week, that's it. That's what we did. No, it's we often get that. I was always the baby face in the team. And as I say, I think you've heard it before, where I walked into the dressing room and was looking to see all the jerseys all hanging up in the dressing room on my debut, and I just seen the wee babies, strip hanging up with the shorts pegged and the socks pegged. That was the start of it. But no, it was great banter in that side. Great group of players. The team atmosphere, we gelled so well together, and we worked hard for each other on the park. It was good. And it's like a bit like the way the players play today. I don't think Celtic play in a fashion, and even going back to even when the Lions played as well, they all worked hard for each other, but
yeah,
kind of refer to things when you were at Celtic yourself. And I think that season, the centenary season, we all worked as a group of players where we did the similar things as what the team's doing just now, where we're hunting in packs, getting the ball back as quickly as possible. And we never gave up, you know what I mean? We were playing to that 90th minute, scoring in the 91st minute and things like that, all to get a result. It was a great season, but we all did it for each other. And that you know, that team bonding and the team spirit on the park when we were playing was there in abundance, you know. And it's the same as this team just now. There's a great atmosphere about the Celtic team just now.
I think it's a great point, because obviously Ange coined that phrase, we never stop, we don't stop. And a few times we've said on the show, think back to the centenary team. The amount of late goals you guys got, Joe.
See, it's a generational thing. I mean, young kids and all social media think, oh, we never stop. We go back to the centenary, we never stopped in the centenary year. And the Lisbon Lions never stopped either. And think, you can go every team, every decade. Teams all worked hard for each other, particularly a Celtic side. They were always tough to, when I played for Aberdeen, they were all tough to play against. But the fabric of them was to attack all the time, the cavalier approach. And also we defended for the front and we hunted in packs, 3 and 4 players in it, the opposition's faces, winning the ball back as quickly as possible and tried to keep a hold of it. That fabric is there and it will always be there with Celtic.
Absolutely. I'm just thinking in my own mind that 2023 were 34 years since you stopped the treble by scoring in the Scottish Cup final, Joe. Next year, is there anything planned to get the guys together to celebrate the 35th anniversary of that?
I don't know. I never thought about that, actually, until you've just reminded me. But all I can say, thank God VAR wasn't there.
With that throw-in? I know.
You know what I mean? That was your tactic in the dressing room. I said to Big Roy before we went out, I think, you know, play every ball, you know what I mean? Just play on, even if it goes out or if they foul for them, just play on. But no, it managed to work for us. And, you know, they're still talking about it to this day, but it's good to see that, thank God, VAR wasn't about then. You know, when they accounted. But I've no doubt we'd have won the game anyway, you know. We were good that day, and we probably could have scored 1 or 2 more.
Without a doubt.
But without a doubt. But anyway.
Well,
job done.
Thankfully, Big Roy didn't stop. He took the throw-in, and a legendary captain of the club, Joe. You don't see him that often out and about at events, etc. But you've managed to get your big teammate alongside some other great captains of the club, Tom Boyd, who won the treble, Danny McGrain, who was part of the 10 men stopping the 10 men winning the league. And you're coming together for a very special evening. And it's just the day after St. Paddy's Day. I've got the number at the bottom of the page here if anybody wants to book tickets. Tell us a wee bit about that. What do you have in store for us?
Well, basically, it's we're speaking about things, and like he says, it's about team spirit and bonding again. And I thought, you know, getting some of the guys back again for an evening or something like that, you know. And I thought about doing something different and doing captains' nights. And initially, I was looking at all the captains for Celtic, and you know, there was Kenny Dalglish. We were trying to get Kenny involved there. I was going to do 4 in one night, so it was supposed to be Kenny, Danny, Roy, and if I tried to get a hold of Paul McStay, but I managed to just get Kenny pulled out because he was on tour with his daughter. He was doing a tour, so got Danny, Roy, and Tom Boyd. So that's the 3 that's doing the first one, and hopefully I can get Paul and Kenny for the next one, along with the other captains as well, with Danny, maybe with Scott Brown at some point. So I've spoken to them all. And it's just something that we want to do, and hopefully have a good evening, share some stories with all the fans, and you know, have a good night. It's St. Paddy's weekend, so there'll be some good Irish music on, and be able to enjoy yourselves. Hopefully, get a good result and another step closer to clinching the title again. So, everybody been in a good mood that night. So, hopefully, it'll go well.
It sounds brilliant. As I say, anybody interested in getting along to see the captains evening, 3-course meal, a really plush event and a good venue, there's the number at the bottom of your page. Give that a wee call and get your tables booked.
Yep.
And
the other thing with that, Paul, is I've some teammates, even down the years, are going along to it as well. Some former teammates, Roy and Danny's team, I never played with myself. They've shown interest to come along as well. So it's going to be good to catch, like say Mark Reed and Graham Sinclair, Pierce O'Leary, and all these guys that played with Roy and Danny for the earlier stages. I was the only one I played against them. I played against Danny Tubbs. I'm good friends with Danny. I go in the circuit quite a bit with Danny. But I played with Roy and I played with Tom Boyd as my captain and things like that. So, I know the stories there, but it'd be good to catch up the other teammates that played with him and share their stories as well, because it's going to be a good night. Peter Martin's going to host it, so he'll be a great laugh. He always is. He's dynamite on that night.
He is, but the thing is, Joe, I've been to a few events, and when it comes to the raffle, you don't want to win. Because if you're up on that stage, he will rip you to pieces, and you're sitting there actually wishing you don't win the prize because you don't want to go up and get a tanking for Peter Martin.
Oh, no. I always get a tanking off him. That's half of the course when I book Peter, I could be in the next room and he'll still rip into me, But he's brilliant. He's great. His delivery's fantastic. He goes down well, and the players love him. That's the thing. It's all good, friendly banter. And he enjoys the night as much as we do.
Oh, I'm sure. A couple of wee questions from the audience before we let you get on, Joe. Alan Robertson, John Brown wasn't happy about that throw, and I think it's still raging, Alan, to be honest with you. And Pat Dolan, here's a question for you. How do you think you would have fared in an Ange Postecoglou side when you were in your prime?
I'd have loved it, because I like to have a bit of freedom playing. But Big Billy did it with me quite a lot, where he gave me the freedom to pop up, get on the ball, and find some space and take players on and things like that, as well as doing my duty. But there was some games that we went into games where we had to be a wee bit more structured and our team setup had to be quite rigid, and you had to do a job and you had to chase back and things like that. Chasing back wasn't my forte. I was all right going forward, but chasing back and helping out Chris Morris and things like that wasn't my forte. But I had to do it. That's the job I do. But I like to get the ball and go at players. So when I see, like, say, Abada and Yota taking players on, it's great. I love it. It's been missing in the Celtic setup for a few years prior to the aim coming. It's been refreshing to see that we're going there, taking teams on, they're taking players on, and they're delivering crosses and creating chances into the box. But I'd have loved it. I'd have loved that setup just now.
I'm just thinking back to some of the left backs that you terrorised, and I remember Stuart Monroe being in that category. You just relished, it seemed, playing against Rangers. Joe, what was it about you? There's some players in that Celtic team that are the same. They always turn up for the big games against Rangers.
It's simple, Paul. I didn't like Rangers. No, I just, that was a rivals, you know what I mean? You wanted to put one over them, and the gaffer, you always, knew it would turn up on the games. I didn't have many bad games against Rangers. But I knew that even if I was out the game, I made up for it for hard work and things like that. But I enjoyed playing against Rangers. I scored a few times against Rangers. And it's one of the games that, you like the challenge. You've got the big crowd, the atmosphere. Who wouldn't like that as a player? Do you know what I mean? It's fantastic. But as I said to you, having that freedom to go, it's coming up there. I remember the games that I enjoyed was St. Paddy's week, where we played them twice in a week. We beat them twice. I think I went through 3 left backs at those 2 games. So I didn't know who to put on me, which was good. But no, I loved playing against them. Loved it. It was the best thing you could do.
Oh, and it showed. It absolutely showed. We've got a lot of people coming in who obviously watch you playing for Celtic. Patrick, Harold, and Ian McMillan. Yeah, Paul McStay, a genius. One of the best you played with, Joe? Paul McStay?
Aye, without a doubt. It wasn't just even playing. It's that group of players, but as well, were special. But as I said to you, the great atmosphere in the dressing room and everything like that. But Paul, every day in training, just in training, and things that he did, whether it was just possession games or 7v7s and things like that, it was brilliant. And then even practice matches and things like that, brilliant. His vision to see things, and you just needed to make that run and he would find you. Or somebody would make an overlap and run and he would find them, he'd thread balls through. He'd seen passes that nobody else seen, to a certain extent, McGregor's done fantastically well. And you can see the way he's playing, with that confidence and controlling the game. It's similar to Paul, but somebody mentioned to me at the game the other night there, he sees a lot of similarities, but I don't think it was at Paul's level. Paul was special. He could burst forward and score a goal for 20 yards and things like that. And even if Paul had a bad game, he picked the paper up on a Sunday and he got man of the match.
It was sensational during that centenary year. Unbelievable during that year. Pat Dolan wants to know who the best fullback was you faced. I know your old Aberdeen teammate, Davy Robertson. You had a few contests with him. Who was the best fullback you faced, Joe?
There was a few. Davy was one that he probably broke more bones in my body than Hendy. So he broke my ribs and had a few broken bones in my foot a few times. He was just clumsy as well, But Davy was a good pal of mine because we were up at Aberdeen together. And we found each other. We were really pally at Aberdeen, coming through FS form, and he was an Aberdeen boy, but I used to go up there, the school holidays and things like that. But we were all good pals. And then we got into the first team together. And then he obviously went to Rangers. After I had been at Celtic a couple of years, but then he joined Rangers, and I was like, for pace, Davy was a centre forward and he had fantastic pace. So, Davy could match me for pace as well. So I had my work cut out playing against him. So the only thing I had, was trying to be tricky with him. But he was a tough opponent. He used to just boot you for the sake of booting you. And it showed we played, I think it was a semi-final at Hampden, and he smashed me. He hit me like a truck. You know what I mean? And just didn't bother going for the ball. I kind of dummied it, span, and then just smashed me in his knee and my ribs. Oh, it's just... But no, he was a tough opponent. But there was a lot of good quality fullbacks he come up against. Sometimes right. There were good players out there, and sometimes you used to go to the park, which the gaffer used to see. I've had 2 or 3 players on me. The gaffer said, treat that as a compliment that they're doubling up on you. You know what I mean? So if somebody was doubling up on me, it means that there was space on somewhere else on the park.
Aye, for sure. I'm going to ask one more question because I think it's relevant to where we are as a football club the now, Joe. Everybody's looking ahead to what we can maybe do in Europe. And Robert Highland asks, what was the best game you played in Europe for Celtic?
There was a few good games, but there was a few enjoyable games. There was a Partizan Belgrade game, even though we went out that night. Big Jackie scored 4. That was an enjoyable game. One we could forget is Neuchâtel Xamax.
Oh,
forget that.
Yep.
That was a poor game, but there was a few. I can't really pinpoint. We didn't really do well in Europe. It was the first stages. I came in 87, 88, 89. It was okay, but when we qualified for Europe the following season, our run wasn't that great. So we were seen to be kind of dropping out the first couple of rounds.
Yeah,
We never had a great run, and it wasn't the Champions League then. The setup, you were automatically out.
That's it. 2 games and you're bounced.
It wasn't the Champions League or the Europa Cup. It was all structured differently.
Mm-hmm. There was no second chance. It was just knockout, Joe, I like a lot of people watching this show, we're a huge fan of yourself playing for Celtic, that double winning team, winning the Scottish Cup. Hopefully there'll be a 35th anniversary event that we can come to next year. But we're talking about the captain's event. Please, if you're interested, the number is on the bottom of your page. We'll keep that running along the bottom of the page for the rest of the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to welcome Joe Miller, a Celtic legend, onto Celtic State of Mind. Thanks for your time, Joe, and hopefully we can catch up soon, my friend.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me. And here's to winning a treble again.
Yes, that's what I like to hear. Nice one, Joe. Speak to you soon, pal. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
What an absolute pleasure it was to have Joe Miller on the show. And I'll tell you what, Brian, you're kind of similar age. Jim, Alan, you'll remember Joe playing often on the right wing. You'll remember him at Aberdeen playing through the centre a wee bit more for Billy McNeil's brilliant centenary team. Jim, I'm going to ask you first, what was your greatest memories of wee Joe?
Obviously, the cup final. Yeah, I mean, I think you won't see many people like Joe Miller again because the way football was going, less and less local lads are going to be playing for Celtic. That's just the way things are these days. But he made a major contribution in the centenary season, and as he said, I mean that team will be still remembered in 100 years' time. It might not be obviously as famous as Osmond Lions, but to win it in that season was huge. Local lad, plays for Celtic fan, scores a cup-winning goal against Rangers, part of the centenary double team. Yeah, it's he'll be well remembered, Joe Miller. Good player throughout his career, playing for different teams. Yeah, big fan. And also, this is all about me. Sorry, if we did Benelux Bratback the first time, I was in the theatre trying to put stuff away. And somebody asked for me, and he said, it's Joe Miller. And I thought, well, it can't be Joe Miller. And Joe Miller gave me a hug, and he said, that was brilliant. You're thinking, Joe Miller? Joe Miller gave me a hug. This is great. Joe Miller gave me a hug. Joe Miller gave me a hug. And he said, if you could help in any way, just give him a shout. He gave me his number. So I had Joe Miller's number. I think this is bonkers. And then the next day he phoned me. I'm at work, and I'm saying, this is Joe Miller on the phone. Hold on, Joe Miller. And he said that he could get me Murdo McLeod to come along to the next night's performance, and Murdo came along. So I've got a lot of time for Joe Miller. In fact, Joe Miller's quote said it was something like it was the best Celtic player he'd ever seen. So I love Joe Miller. Yeah, Joe Miller's a good guy.
I seen that quote on your poster. We'll come back to Bratback because obviously there has been a new announcement on that as well, Jim. Absolutely loved wee Joe when he played, Brian. And as Jim quite rightly says, the slayer of Rangers' treble hopes back in 1989. And by the way, we were the underdogs going into that. There had been a lot happening that season. Rangers beat us 4-1, 5-1, but we beat them in the cup final. And wee Joe was a goal scorer, etching his name into the Celtic history books forever and more, Brian. Was he just ahead of your time, wee Joe?
I would have been turning 6 then, so I've only obviously seen it retrospectively. But yeah, amazing season, as Jim said. Can't really add too much, but when you think about the likes of playing beside Paul McStay and that sort of core group, we spoke about it with Tom Boyd the night a few weeks ago, and we were talking about how there's certain characters are just so down to earth and sort of humble, and Celtic have always had a through line almost to these guys. And Joe's another example. Really nice human being by all accounts. Great guy, and as Jim said, a hero for what he achieved in that one season.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be good to see him again coming to Glasgow later on this month. Alan Morrison. I'm not going to ask anybody for their ages, but I'm guessing that you've got the memories similar to Jim and I when it comes to wee Joe in that centenary year. Sorry, Alan, you're muted at the moment, pal.
Sorry.
That's his old age getting.
There we go. Is it?
A schoolboy error or just old age kicking in, or both. So by that time, my family had moved down to England, so it was actually very difficult to see Celtic at that time. If you weren't, you know what I mean, you just never saw them. Very rarely on TV and stuff, highlight shows maybe. So, but my memories of Joe Miller were that he was very much a modern, I would say, type of forward, because although, you know, you say he played on the right wing, he played as a striker. I remember him as being you almost didn't know whether he was a winger or a striker. He was very adaptable. He was a sort of modern forward, I guess you would call it. It was always great that such a wee guy could be successful, because even in those days, you know, it was difficult for smaller players to break through. There was a bias towards bigger, more athletic players even then. I mean, it's probably even worse now, to be honest. But what he had to do, you know, was to make up for it with his just prodigious work rate. So I think, you know, he would have been someone that you could have relied upon to not just be a dangerous all-round attacker, but also, you know, you were talking to him there about, would he want to play in Ange's system? I think his sort of pressing would have been pretty impressive as well, playing under that system. So yeah, and you know, those were the sort of happy days before the storm, weren't they? That season really, but also bittersweet memories of that season in that sense, because I could always sense, you could sense the money that they were spending across the city, that success perhaps wasn't going to last too long, and that was like the last hurrah of that 80s team, which was, you know, one of my favourites. The McLeods, the McStays, the Nicholases, the McGarveys, and that sort of year was almost the last of some of those players, you know, winning together as a Celtic team.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, one last point about the cup final. No, I just remember it was that I was there was only 6,000 season ticket holders, and I was one of them, and I didn't qualify to get a ticket for the cup final. And I won a competition.
That's bizarre.
I won a competition in the Evening Times to get a ticket for the cup final, and I had to go to the Evening Times and pose like a Haddy with about 20 other people having won a ticket for the cup final. And I'd written to Jack McGinn, and he was giving me all this. Well, what do we do about the fans in Ireland who are coming, and the fans from London who are coming? And you're thinking, I'm a season ticket holder, and you're not giving me a ticket. And that's why Save Ourselves started. I'm only kidding. But anyway, so...
No, it's interesting, but it's the changes of the times. Like, even when Alan's talking there, I remember back in those times, late 80s, people used to put adverts in the Celtic fanzines saying that maybe they lived in Ottawa or something in Canada, and they wanted people to send videos of the Celtic games over to them because they couldn't see the games. It was incredible. But anybody that wants to see vintage Joe, I'm sure you can check out the YouTube reels and all that. But there's one goal in particular that stands out that's maybe not as famous as some of the goals scored in the centenary season or in the cup final. He scored against Hibs one day, and it was a gloriously sunny day. And I'm going to say Jack Janoski scored the second goal. It was 2-0. I think Andy Gorham was in goal. What a strike, wee Joe. It was a volley. Brilliant goal. And he had a wrist. I think he'd maybe dislocated or broke his wrist, and he was coming back for injury. He had a plaster or something on his wrist, and he runs away. Superb. Great memories of wee Joe. I'm going to stick with wingers before we go on anywhere else, Alan. And I'm going to ask you your thoughts on where we are at the moment, because obviously Maeda, he pulls up with an injury the other night against Hearts. Abada gets put back in the side because he deserved it, because he played so well against St Mirren. But then, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he had a great game against Hearts the other night. Jota comes back in, Haksabanovic comes on and does well. Let's talk about the wingers and how we're going to actually line up to face Hearts at Tynecastle, Alan, in your view.
Mm-hmm. So is there news on Maeda? Is he definitely out, or do we know?
There's been talk about... See, this is the thing. There's been no... as far as I'm aware, definitive answer to say he's definitely not playing. But we're certainly looking at the injury, and Ange has mentioned his injury. So I'm guessing that he won't play tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I mean, you know, we've got an array of talent, and they're all very, very different. So it's really a question of what the manager thinks is most going to give them problems. You know, I think Maeda's useful when you're playing against, if they continue with a back three, which they have been for a lot of the season, then that gives them good space really to be running into behind the wing back. So that's always a good option. You know, Abada, I was a little bit disappointed with myself. You know, you do get a lot of rubbish with Abada. He has a lot of bad decisions, a lot of poor execution, but at the end of it, you do get an awful lot of output as well. So it's always going to take the rough with the smooth with him. But on balance, he provides a tremendous amount of, chances and shots from good positions and so forth. Jota, I still don't think Jota's really quite the player that he was last season, or since he came back from his injury, actually. He doesn't seem to be quite as quick over the ground. But still, again, with Jota, you've got somebody who is going to continually try and test the opposition in terms of he'll take players on, he won't get disappointed. The game against St Mirren was a classic. He was having a wretched game, but he kept going. He kept going. He kept going. He kept going. He kept getting in the box. He kept trying things. He got his reward for the goal. And that's a brilliant attitude to have. And then the interesting one, even more interesting one, is maybe Haksabanovic. So on the huddle breakdown this week, I was saying I don't think he's a winger. I genuinely don't think he's a winger. He doesn't sort of stack up in terms of his data as a winger. He really does stack up more as either an attacking 8 or as a number 10. In terms of he's way out there compared to the other wingers in terms of his creativity, his chance creation, the quality of his passing, his technical ability and his close control, his first touch are all superb. He doesn't have that pace really to get away from fullback. So it'd be interesting if we do play him. I think he does well out wide, but I think he's not really a winger. So I don't know if that's answered your question. I suspect if Maid is not fit, he'll go with Abada and Jota, to be honest with you. But I think he would probably want Maida to be on the pitch, because I think if Hearts are feeling bold, that will be the option in behind that will be, that I think Ange will be looking for.
Yeah, he is. He's definitely a big loss. By the way, Michael McDonald reminds me that Jackanoski scored an overhead kick that day against Hibs. Jim, you were probably at that game 2-0. What's your thoughts on the wide position? So important to this Ange shape and this Ange team. Who do you pick tomorrow if indeed Maeda is not fit?
I think you always play your best team, and I think Haksabanovic is fantastic. I'd agree with all the points Alan made there. I think from the first time that we saw him up at Ross County, I think it was, he just looked dead confident, upper body strength, looks like a proper player. I'd like him in the team. Jota has to play, Kyogo has to play, so he may not be a winger, but I think I'd play him on the right-hand side. I think Jota's more effective on the left. That's my best front three. I think Abada's an impact player. I think I've talked about Abada too much since he came here. Fantastic contribution last season, an instinctive player. Put the ball ahead of him, he'll run onto it. He's got a great eye for a goal, but give him the ball and when you have to think about it, I think he struggles quite a lot of the time. I think having Rolfs in the team certainly helped a bit. He still didn't play that well the other night. So I'd like that front three. That's what I think. If everyone's fit, that's the front three I would play, because I think there's tons of goals in that. 3 really skillful players. Haksabanovic from a pace point of view, maybe not too good, but hey-ho, what a player. I think he's fantastic. I think it'd be good to see him have a kind of half-decent run in the team.
Sometimes that happens to the misfortune of others, and, an injury, you never want anybody injured, Jim, but I get what you mean there. I want to see him getting a few games so that we can see the true impact of Haksabanovic. He seems to be something of a favourite and amongst the commenters on here. Anyway, Robert Highland, if Hacksaw is fit, he must start with Jota. The minute you get a nickname, Brian, it means that you've been welcomed into the side, and Big John was calling Alistair Johnson Begbie during the week, and that's going to stick, certainly on Acsom anyway. What's your thoughts on the front line tomorrow at Tynecastle, Brian?
So I suspect it will be Jota, Kyogo and Abada. That's probably the safest bet. I'm a big fan of Haksabanovic, or Action Manovic, as we've called him a couple of times, and I think it's actually precisely because of what Alan said, because I agree he's not like the traditional winger, but because of the way we play, when he is out wide and Hatate overlaps and then the fullback overlaps and they'll sort of change, marking that after running after Maeda or Jota for 60 minutes, 65 minutes is impossible. And I think that's what gave him the space against Hearts the other night, because they don't really know what he's going to do, because we don't really know what he's going to do. And I always think it's really important to have that kind of maverick spark off the bench. So I would probably keep him on the bench and bring him on. And I think, again, spotting with Abada, big fan of Abada. I've said he plays like a striker out wide sometimes, because his finishing is excellent. He's so instinctive, his position is good, but he's not the best dribbler. So that aspect up the front three, but I don't imagine there'll be loads of changes. I get the impression that the changes made against Hearts the other night, where an attempt to sort of just rest a couple of players that are definitely going to play. There is a few players I'd like to see. I'd like to see Awata. The only question with that is Kalmak and Moya and Hecate are all undroppable, really. It's really hard to fit into that, but I just think he looks, I mean, he's quite short, but he's an absolute unit. He looks really, really strong and really good at winning the ball back. So I think, depending on how they play, because the way they played against us, they'll try to frustrate us and push forward. And they didn't really offer a lot in attacking, but it was more just to sort of nullify us. And I just think if they do get a break, he's a bit stronger defensively than maybe McGregor, especially at Tynecastle. So there's something to consider, but I don't suspect he'll start, but I would like to see him.
I've seen a lot of comments coming in, Brian, in relation to Awata on a Celtic State of Mind, and also Haksabanovic, as I said before, and I love that word maverick, because we love a maverick, don't we? We really do. John Francis agrees he would actually play him alongside Kalmak and Hatate in the midfield. I don't know if there's going to be big changes tomorrow. It's such an important game with it being in the Cup. I think before the end of the season, we will see some changes like that to give these players game time. And we've also got opinionated Glaswegian OG. What's the panel's nicknames? Well, I've certainly not given them any nicknames, but if you want to give us any suggestions, please let us know.
You've opened a can of worms now.
Alan's hand is over his head. He's hiding his face. There we go.
See you later.
Any bad language, and I'll not bring them up. There we go. I'm pretty sure I've been called a few things, certainly on social media. A lot of the chat this week has been around the fact that Ange is now a Centurion, 100 games under his belt, 74 wins. Alan, and the two big questions for me is, as a fan, greatest moments under Ange, but also looking ahead for the next 100. What can we achieve in the next 100 games? Because he will be here for another 100 games, right? Let's just put that down in stone first and foremost, Alan. So best memories under Ange so far, and what can he take us to? What can we achieve in the next 100 games?
I think the thing that sprang into my mind when you asked that question, so if I think about it, I might come up with another answer, but I'll give you the first thing that sprang into my head, which was after the Dundee United game when we clinched the league last season, and just the level of emotion that he had, and what it meant to him. And I don't think we realised the pressure he probably put on himself more than anyone at the club, I suspect. But the pressure, and certainly the fans, I don't think put him under a lot of pressure. But the pressure he put on himself to get that league title, that it just spoke volumes about the way he operates, because he never revealed that really at any point during the season. You'd never have thought that he felt any way under pressure at any point. He always seemed in control, but you just saw his kind of personal mask slip a little bit, the emotion come through. And that's the first thing that sprung into my mind when you mentioned that, and I thought that was a really insightful moment, because he is somebody he doesn't. Unlike at the other side of the city where we've got somebody who loves to overshare every 5 minutes, Ange's not really like that, is he? So when he speaks, it's important, and you listen because it means something. So it'd be that for me, I think.
No, without a doubt. And it's interesting. You said that he hadn't revealed it, and I've listened to a lot of these interviews after the fact where he's been talking about, listen, it was non-negotiable. Because I remember, on Acsom, us saying, can we win the league this season? This is before Ange comes in, once he's come in, once he's bedding in. And I always remember the discussion with Kevin Graham where he's saying, as long as we're in touching distance at Christmas, I'm thinking, no, that isn't good enough. We need to be ahead. We need to win this league. And then after the event, Ange talks about, the necessity, it not being an option to finish second. But he never said that all the way through the season, like you say, Alan. He waited until the job was done, and then he revealed his truth, thoughts and emotions around it. Where do you think we can go? Because Johnny sums it up here, trophies and more trophies, absolutely. That's going to be tremendous, and obviously a period of domination is what we're aiming for. But obviously we've also got Europe to think about as well, Alan. And where do you think he can take us there?
Yeah, I think given time, I would honestly expect us to become a competitive team. Maybe not at Champions League level. I think there's just too many structural issues that would stop us competing with the likes of Real Madrid on a regular. We could beat them on a one-off game maybe once every 10 times, whatever. But if you played three teams of that caliber, a club like Celtic, it'd be very difficult to put together 3 results in a row against that quality of opposition. But I think at Europa League level, I do think Ange could make Celtic a very, very competitive team. There could be some real real fun to be had. And I think that's the challenge for him, is really to take that forward. It was the biggest shame this season, I think, was we didn't drop into the Europa League. That was the biggest, because I think we could have done good things there even this season. So definitely in Europe, because I don't think, even personally for Ange, I don't think his star will be as shiny unless he can take Celtic forward in Europe, because that's what boards of other clubs will look at in terms of, is he overperforming, etc. So for him personally, I think that would be a big part of the mission. But and he knows he's got to keep Celtic on top in Scotland as well. But I think it's that European progress is really what I'm looking for next.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, some of the nicknames that are coming in cannot be shown on a screen, but I'm getting called the Wig, which is fine. I can take that. Brian, you're an older James Forrest apparently. So there you go. That's not bad.
I'll take it. That's all right.
And Jim, you have often been called a doppelganger for Bobby Duvall, so you're going to have to take that. But listen, that's a Hollywood actor, so you've got to take that.
He's not dead.
He was in that Shot at Glory movie, wasn't he?
Shot at Glory, yeah. My voice, yeah.
I've got that on DVD. I've not watched it yet. Still have got a DVD player though. Jim, what about yourself? Alan's been looking back at a moment that sprung to his mind and where Ange can take us in the next 100 games. What's your thoughts?
I think the moment looking back was the Abada goal against United, just before the 3-0 game, that we were kind of getting a bit closer to them, but they had lost that kind of 96th minute goal at Ross County, and it was all set up for us to get closer to them, and Beaton gets sent off stupidly, and then you're thinking we're blowing this, and then injury time goal, bang, you think we've got a chance, and then the following Wednesday night was under the lights in the 3-0 game. So I think that's my big memory. I'm a bit more cautious looking forward. I think football's about fine margins, and I think before the League Cup final, I thought it might have went to penalties, and when they scored, I'm thinking, oh no, this is going to happen. If we lose this game, what will that mean? And I thought the reaction after the game from both sides of the city was a bit over the top. We put them back in their box and all that sort of stuff. There's only one goal in it at the end of the day, and they've been very consistent. So, and they were saying this is awful, this is terrible. One goal changes the game. So I'm a bit more cautious looking forward. I think we've got a good squad. Ange is a fantastic manager. I think the quality of football in Scotland is really, really poor. I think there's a massive chasm between the top two and the rest. In years gone by, you'd look for maybe Hibs and Aberdeen and Hearts to take points off them. That hasn't happened. It hasn't happened very much. And the margins are just so fine. Now, we've got this 9-point lead, which is really, really handy, because I look back on the season so far, and I think 7 of those points, they dropped 7 points in 5 games. And that was a bit that's given us this lead, and they were very sloppy. And they look like, because we've been great, we've won all these games, but they've won all the games as well. And maybe they haven't won them as well as we've won our games, but they've still won all the games, and they're still kind of on our coattails, if you call 9 points our coattails. We've said we've been great, but they've not lost any ground, and all it takes is one slip. And watching the game the other night, after 20 minutes, you're thinking, could this be the game that we make a wee slip here? We don't. We're going to win the game. So I'm a bit more cautious moving forward. I think it's always going to be hard to compete in Europe, given the differences in the finances. I agree with Alan, the Champions League is like beyond us. There's no reason why we couldn't make a fist of the Europa. But then you look at some of the teams that end up playing in that, the Man United, the Barcelona. So I just think it's really difficult in Europe. But cautiously optimistic. We bit of caution there.
I like that from you, though, Jim, and that's what we expect from your good self. I think the biggest disappointment for me, not so much the Midtjylland game, because Ange was up against it in those 2 ties, and we actually took it to extra time and could have sneaked through. It was the Bodo Glimt game, really, for me, Brian. That was the disappointment. And I take what Alan says about this season. Yeah, I don't know how it would have affected the domestic aspirations, but I would have liked to have seen Celtic in the Europa League this season, because I just think we're a much better side than we were last time round. But yeah, I can wait till next season. What about yourself, Brian? Looking back on the last 100 games, something I mentioned yesterday actually was the very few Celtic managers have managed 300 or more games at Celtic Park. And I was actually quite surprised when I looked at this. So Willie Maley did it. 1,600 and odd games he managed. Jimmy McGrory did it. Jock Stein, of course. Billy McNeill and Neil Lennon did it over 2 different periods, so not consecutively. And of course, other than that, nobody else in the history of Celtic has managed more than 300 games at the club. So 100 is a milestone, 200 is a milestone, 300 is virtually unthinkable at times, especially in the one sitting, Brian. But I'm going to confidently say he's going to be here for another 100 games. So what are you looking forward to? What do you expect from this manager?
Well, expectation versus sort of hope is two different things. I would hope that I'm kind of actually in between Jim and Al, because I think that progression in Europe would be good, but I think it's incremental. So I think playing the Champions League, drop into Europa League, win a knockout tie. That's the first thing. We do that. That's better than we've done for a long time. Mm-hmm. So I'd be happy with that. Hope is that we go even further and make a real stab at being competitive at the sort of quarter-final, semi-final stages of the Europa League. And I think that's where a long-term aim should be. And domestically, I think just like Jim, I'm hesitant to be really dismissive of Rangers, because I don't think they're quite as far away from us as everyone thinks. I think they're going to get better. I think this season's probably a write-off. I don't think they're going to do it in the league. I think we're quite comfortable there. But I think next season, we're going to have to improve, because they're going to improve. And then hopefully that has a knock-on effect. So if you're looking at shorter term, just keep on improving. It looks like Ange is already planning his next transfer window, which I kind of love. I love that forward-thinking mentality. I love that aggression. I saw yesterday, I think he'd hired a coach from Man City, another scout. Yeah. So he's also making plans to get other players in, because he knows he's got to be better. And in terms of him being here for another 100 games, I absolutely think he will. I saw it, apparently he's linked with Spurs now. I think Ange, and I could be wrong, I don't know the guy personally, but it seems to me he's more concerned about leaving a legacy. He's more concerned about making an impact. Now, if he can do that either one of two ways. He can be fairly successful in Europe and be regarded well for that, as well as obviously the accolades he's already got, trophies, style of play, or he can overhaul, I suppose, their semi-fictional number of cups they've won, and leave that mark and be the Celtic manager that totally eclipsed and won the most trophies a club's won. And I think either of them would be good, and I think if they'd done that, then they maybe consider looking elsewhere. But I don't think that's going to happen for a while. He doesn't seem a man sort of driven by the desire to manage in the Premier League. If anything, and this is just pie in the sky, but I think he'd go to Spain or somewhere like that, or Germany, or he would go to England, if I'm honest. I think the lack of time in the Premier League compared to even a club like Celtic, where you don't get a lot of time, is insane. And I don't think, I think you see managers getting sacked after 10 games, 12 games, and I think Andrew need more than that in the Premier League to get up to speed. So I think he's realistic enough to know. Whereas somewhere like Germany, where clubs are more project focused, I think somewhere like that may be a future destination more than England. It's just there's an arrogance that the assumption is he's going to go to England because that's where the money is, and I just get the impression I don't think he's that interested in that. I think he's more about legacy and reputation and making an impact. Could be wrong. We'll find out.
I hope you're right. If you were to go from what Ange Postecoglou himself has said, Brian, then you would come to a conclusion similar to that. I mean, what I've been saying during the week is I disagree slightly with regards to your view on Rangers. Not that we can underestimate them. I don't get that at all. I don't want complacency to set in. I take what Jim was saying in terms of how close that game actually was and the reaction to it from the other side, although I'll let them fall out with each other every day of the week. It was a bit OTT, I thought. I don't think they will have the ability to come back a great deal stronger after the summer in terms of recruitment, simply because of, we know the financial situation that they're in terms of assets, sell an asset, buy 3 other players. They don't seem to be in a position to do that. So I'm not quite sure they will, although I'm only focusing on Celtic and what we're going to do. And I've mentioned this again. I still think that we've got a bit of fat around the edges when it comes to the squad. We've got 12 players out on loan. There's 2 or 3 players not contributing at the moment who are still in the first team squad. And I think, you move them on, you look at the wages that you're going to save in relation to that, and the cumulative transfer fees that we'll get for the likes of Barkas and Ajeti and Soro and all these other guys that are out on loan. and bring in 3 or 4 new players who are going to contribute and push for a jersey. And I think we will be stronger as a result of that.
I think obviously, I think obviously nothing to do with Ange, but just something that we said a minute ago. It'd be good to win a knockout tie. So we're saying, I think we can do well in Europe. We haven't won a knockout tie in nearly 20 years or something. So doesn't add up for me. It'd be different if we're doing well every year in Europe. We're not. We're miles away in Europe, and that's such a shocking indictment. And what's been on in the last 20 years in terms of Europe, nothing to do with Ange. So I think it's a bit of a challenge, Europe, for me. A bit of a challenge.
No, I agree with
that. That's what it's been, Jim. It's just that wee win is huge. So to do that after not doing it for that long time would be a massive achievement. I don't know if it's going to happen next year, but I think that should be the minimum aim, is to always do better than we've done. And I think we will. I think we're more suited to Europe than maybe we showed previously. But again, we'll see.
We will. We definitely will. See, Alan, I'm going to ask you a question. I think I know the answer to this, right? Because obviously, even when Joe's on, he brings up VAR. It's something that constantly comes up. I don't want to labour it. But one question I do have about it is people going about it being better. Right, okay, I get all that, and I get the fact that we could use it better and stuff like that. But even just the graphics are rubbish. I mean, see, when you're looking at that Hearts goal, the graphics are appalling in terms of it being absolutely conclusive. Where's the zoom and the 3D and all that? I guess we're just on the basic package with VAR. Is that right? Is there a more expensive one out there?
Yeah, absolutely. We have the Poundland VAR. It's literally, it's 6 cameras max and very low end graphics. Premier League have got 30 cameras and obviously much higher end graphics. So yes, it is literally a really cheap version of VAR technically that we're operating here. I guess the clubs, it's an extra cost to pay for it. A lot of the clubs don't seem to want to pay for it for cup ties, which is interesting. And yeah, I agree. I mean that Giannelli goal on the midweek there. I mean, listen. To my naked eye, it's almost impossible to tell which player was ahead of which, and given the angle and so forth. So, in that circumstance, the benefit of the doubt should go to the attacker. That should be the way it goes, right? So, yeah. But you're right. It just looks amateurish. Our part-time refs are clearly making a hash of it over and over again. The length of time. I suspect, I'll try and be a little bit charitable, is that I suspect most countries that have adopted it have taken a few seasons for it to settle down and the operation of it to become a lot slicker. So it is the first season of it. So, I'm trying to be charitable here, but it's as long as we've got the same part-time referees where there's no transparency around how they're recruited, how they're assessed, how they're assigned, and as long as those structural issues are still there, then we're going to continue to get bad results. And there's no point blaming VAR. VAR is just a process. It's just a piece of software, some hardware, and a set of procedures. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's the right way to go. It's the people operating that is the issue, and that I don't see that changing until there's radical overhaul at the SFA, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's a Poundland system operated by part-time refs. There you go, in a nutshell, and that's why it's not giving us the results we would expect. Obviously, today's show with you guys is a wee bit shorter because we had Joe Miller coming in as a special guest, and we've only got a few minutes to go, and I want to talk about tomorrow. I've been dreaming of a treble, obviously, all season, and we're not being allowed to say it because it's as if we're going to jinx it or something like that, Jim. Tomorrow, tough game at Tynecastle tomorrow. We know it's tough. We've had tough games under Ange there this season. In terms of changes, there was a lot of talk around the fullbacks. Obviously, we've already spoken about the wingers. He might tinker tomorrow, but would you expect him to stick with the guys like Moy, bring Johnson back in? If Taylor's fit, bring Taylor back in as well, Jim?
Yes, to both of them. I think it's an ideal game for Moy. That's the kind of game when things are a bit mad. He's the kind of guy to put his foot in the ball and kind of calm things down. Again, you play your best team. It's good to see Wilson back the other night. They looked a wee bit rusty, understandably so. Bernabei, same as well. So if Johnson and Taylor fit, they come straight back in. I said earlier, I'd like to see Haksabanovic get a start. I think Moy sitting in midfield. Hatate has to come back, obviously. And it'll be a good cup tie. Looking forward to tomorrow because there's a lot of games in the cup. Certainly, if you're at home against lower league opposition, it's a bit of a bore, but this will be a proper cup tie tomorrow, and looking forward to it. And I think we just do it by the odd goal in 5. That's my prediction. 3-2 tomorrow.
I do see goals. I'm the same, Jim. I think back to that game we played there, the 4-3 game, the first game that VAR was introduced.
Also, lots of cards, lots of yellows, maybe the odd red tomorrow. It'll be a feisty encounter.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, the tickets seem to be like gold dust. I'm not sure how many of the Acsom contributors managed to get them. Probably the usual suspects who have got contacts all over the place. What about yourself, Brian? How do you see it going tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard, but I think there'll be goals in it. But I think it'll be 3 or 4-1, because I think that what was shown, and I think Alan made a point earlier on about Jota against St Mirren. He was playing really poorly, but even guys like him are the flair players. He had such a grit, determination, and a resilience to keep going until we scored. And I think that's indicative of the team's mentality. I think across the board, but even when Hearts scored first and St Mirren scored first, I never really felt in doubt. We couldn't handle the occasion. I think we'll settle, we'll keep playing our football, and I think once we score one, I think we can score a few. I don't think it'll be easy, but I do expect us to have, to score a few late goals and secure the victory. And again, these games are always a good test. I think that actually, as good as Celtic have been recently, that there is an extra gear, I think. And I think places at Tynecastle bring that out in the players. So I think it'll have the opposite effect. I don't think we'll be intimidated.
Yeah. And again, we have shown character, coming back twice in a row there, St Mirren and Hearts. Sometimes that isn't looked at. That's a mentality. That is the character of the team, coming back from that and continuing to stick to the game plan. I want to bring this up because Ralston got a wee bit of stick on the comments the other night regarding some of his crosses, but his through balls are superb. The way that he cuts through that defence, I thought, he showed a couple of times the other night that he's very good at that. But I would expect him to drop back to the bench, Alan. What about yourself tomorrow? How do you feel that we're going to line up? And what about the outcome? Are you in agreement with Jim or Brian?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely, for sure. I mean, I would definitely have Johnson straight back in. I mean, he's been superb from day one, from minute one of the first game. He's been excellent, and he's straight back in for me. I think Taylor didn't sound like his injury was serious. I think he'll be back in. I agree completely with what Jim said about Moy. I think his ability to take the ball under pressure, to find space, to be calm in a game like that is going to be very valuable. I would love to see Haksabanovic start actually with Jota, but I suspect, as Brian said, I think he'll probably go with Abada and Jota when it comes to it. But so I think it'll be close to the team that's been quite sort of consistent in terms of selection. In terms of the game itself, they're good at home. They've scored 34 goals at home in the league, which is 14 games. Is pretty impressive. But there is a huge gulf between Celtic and even Hearts in third and the rest of the league especially. And I just think there's such a calmness and patience about the way we play. We don't change anything, even if there's a setback. Nothing changes. There's a belief, there's a confidence of the players in each other and of what they're trying to achieve. And therefore there's a consistency. There's a consistency in performance levels at team level that is, it's not a short-term form thing. Now, this has been going on for the best part of 18 months almost. So I just think that it's a cup tie, right? Their goalkeeper could be outstanding. We could get a crazy red card against. We know that if the ball hits any part of the upper body of a Celtic player in the box, it's likely to result in a penalty. All those things could happen. In fact, all of them could happen in the same game. However, all things being equal, we just know that even if it's not going well, because they'll fly out the traps at us, they'll hound us all over the pitch. They'll play the Devlins and the Hallidays. They'll get in Celtic's faces. But even if we're a goal down at half time or it's level, you just know that as the game wears on, when Celtic, when this 5 substitutes come off the bench, the quality that comes off the bench, that something will happen, and that I think we'll work it out. We'll work it out. So I've got a lot of confidence in this squad of players and the way that they're playing, the way that they're being managed. And I'm sure one day it will come unstuck. Of course it will, because that's football. But hopefully not tomorrow.
We'll work it out. I like that because that's exactly what they do. Even in adversity, they're able to work through it in a patient manner. They don't panic. The game plan stays as it is. And like you say, you've always got that 60, 65-minute mark where we can make a big change if we need to. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to the Lathams tonight. Never seen them live. If anybody's in Glasgow, you might see me bouncing about wherever all the old guys stand. I'm not quite sure what happens with all the old guys at a gig these days, but I'll find out soon enough.
Sit
Do
down,
it?
yeah.
Oh,
Sit down
brilliant.
at the back.
I'll probably need a wee sit down. I remember going to a gig once and I got a cup of tea at the bar. That's a true story. That was in Glasgow as well. They made me a cup of tea. Brilliant. I'm ancient. Thanks everybody for getting involved. It's been great fun talking to the three guys there, and also to Joe Miller as well beforehand, a big hero of mine from the centenary year. Subscribe to the channel, give us a wee thumbs up on the YouTube, and join us tomorrow, half an hour before kickoff, where I will be back with someone as yet unconfirmed to talk about the action at Tynecastle. Thank you to Brian and Jim and Alan for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.